I'm just gonna jump right into it. The protests have been going on, and I think it would be really good to just talk about self-defense and get right into it, like what's really important right now, especially for a lot of not white people at this moment who are genuinely like under attack. Like
Mhm.
so many activists, like happens it does happen, but it's just like so visceral right now how many activists are just going missing or ending up dead. So like self-defense is really important right now.
Yeah, and self-defense is, I guess, really, it's such a broad question. Like the entire premise, the Black Panther Party was the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Like it's such a broad, like umbrella. It's also all-encompassing, I guess, everything, because it's just is basically securing the very means to, like, live your life. I guess, like, is in the most, like, basic sense is how you go about securing being able to live your life just peacefully, and being unbothered by whatever external threats are coming your way. And I think during this time, when it comes to self-defense, the most important thing to look at and for people to be prepared for is, I think, the protests that they're engaging in. Having a group of people, whether it's just their friends who they're going to the protest with, a small group, or if they're in like some larger organization or something, or they're at a particularly well organized protest and they're just following the orders and what's being said. There has to be some sort of specific focus on making sure that people are positioning themselves and operating, like physically positioning themselves in the streets in some sort of unison, that people do have some sort of cohesion with how they go about it, because the time when people get hurt is when groups get split up, when people get separated, when people get too close to the police and not people to back them up, and some people are thinking that they're retreating, other people are thinking that you're supposed to engage at that time. I think it's really important, I don't know, and this is something I think really the left needs to work on, is just really talking more practically about how we operate when a protest turns into, the protests that have been happening in the United States. This is exactly what one would hope for if you're trying to have, like, radical change. If that's what you're rooting for, the way these protests have gone, it's like that is the outcome you would hope for. But I think in a lot of ways, we weren't necessarily ready for it yet. I mean, people obviously learn by doing, they learn along the way. But I do think for the organized segments, the politically organized groups who are on the side of the protesters, are on the side of the Black Lives Matter movement, I don't think most organizations have not been particularly well equipped to actually harness how much potential and how much energy and how much militancy there is amongst the people. So I think a lot of people need to, join organizations or make their own organizations or groups, just making sure that there are people who not only have your back, but people who have, like, put thought and effort and, like, are following a certain system of, like, making sure the people around them are safe. Because that's when people are getting and stuff like that, it's because they're not sticking together, and because they're when the height of these protests, like, which are very casually happen all across the world every single day, those big, really big core groups, the police can't oppose those. The police always back down whenever that amount of people is there. But it's when those numbers dwindle, when they separate the groups, when they sow division and stuff like that, which is when people start getting hurt. So together, that's the most important thing for self-defense, is really just, it's cohesion and, like, numbers, but also just, like, coordinated numbers. You have to have, like, a coordinated mass of people. And I think that's the most important thing. That's really hard because that has to happen on so many levels, from the individual level all the way up to, like, institutionally with, like, organizational level with whoever is running these protests and stuff. And it requires, like, some big cultural shifts and stuff. But I think we just have to get focused much more in the immediate sense on how we keep ourselves safe doing this, because it's foolhardy to engage in a struggle of this severity in the United States, where the level the struggle has advanced to is at a point where it would be very foolish and dangerous to not take this extremely seriously and have a sobering look at where we are, what we're going up against, and what it's going to take for us to keep ourselves safe, because there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff standing in the way of achieving our goals, achieving justice. So yeah, I don't even. That's so big and broad, I guess. But there's a lot of things I think that the left could do to make sure we have better capabilities to defend ourselves, because we are under attack, evidently. And I think one thing is definitely there needs a lot more. The people who are more militant, stuff like that, we need to learn from, especially if you look at like France or like Chile or something like that. A lot of these other countries, you see the coordination between. I think honestly, actually, the biggest thing for self-defense, really, now that I think about it, that would help us, is if we honestly get all of the liberals to just give up on this attempt to just be like peaceful, and just make them understand what, yes, that's over, and that's not like, other countries. I was reading this thing, I was reading this piece from, I'll send it to you actually, and you should link it to this video too, but this person who, they participated in big protest movements in Egypt. There's like 3 consecutive years where they had like revolutions essentially. And they said, I attended my first real protest, which they said their first real protest was when they saw somebody die at like 10 years old or something like that. And like by like 15, they were like, oh, like when like kids aren't supposed to be a protest. Like the word protest just holds a completely different like station. Like what it means to them is completely different from how Americans see that. These arguments about civility, because all the militant shit has been like erased from history, and people have been like brain thinking that something like that. And we need just more mass, because people are angry, people are very, very much so accepting that what we have is not acceptable and that we need change. But I think people are afraid.
Who are angry. It's just, I feel like the people who are angry are still in that position of feeling like they have to be civil, or if it's not that, it's the American, like the extreme pendulum where it's just like reactionary violence. Like who they're gonna be violent to is vulnerable people. Real organized type of strikes at like actual places of capital, actual places that are causing harm, which is the difference between people who get mad like, oh no, they're looting a Walmart. I'm like, good. Like that's what you should be doing at those times. It's like there is an actual difference between like the destruction of like a community just burning to the ground. It's just like, oh no, there's like people lived here, versus like this is a superstore. Like they're insured, they have billions of dollars. They're at no point are like if the employees are like safe, it's just a store with stuff in it. These people are reclaiming the stuff that was stolen from them. Like,
yeah, and it's important that a lot of people who might be willing to participate in more militant actions, I think would be a lot less afraid to go if it was just much better organized. Was like an actual like system to this, which did seem, so nobody's gonna be afraid of going out and like getting their skull cracked by some cop or something like that, because it's like, no, we come into this like coordinated, we do this tight, like we have goals and we have certain like methods of doing things. We're not engaging, biting off more than we can chew, engage like violent actions, like giving up on violence once the protest commits to giving up, like leaving not behind. There's a time and a place for it. Once you've reached past that, there needs to be an actual like method of doing it that is effective and is making proper use of the amount of people who are even willing to get into something like that. But then also that is going to keep people safe, because random people smashing shit like that, it's just not. And people getting split up and doing this, it's not. There's a reason like that's when people start getting arrested. That's why when people face like the heights of like this brutality. Yeah, yes, and it has to be organized and coordinated. Well, burn down a whole they burned down a precinct. I mean, yeah, they burned down a precinct in fucking Minneapolis, and then in Nashville, didn't they burn down City Hall or something like that, I believe. Um, yeah. So yeah, obviously they'll back down if you really go for it. They'll back the fuck down, but it has to be organized and coordinated. I think that's really important because that is how we need to view self-defense, like as like the left. Um, there's a lot of things which I like. We're as well prepared in aspects as the right is for they're planning for more than self-defense. But I wish there was more things that we were a little bit better at, but we do need to have something that completely rethinks, I guess, and especially for an American content, the we don't have in the present day really have like a framework for like leftist self-defense. We can look back to the past and stuff like that, but we have to kind of create our own shit because what the right has is incompatible with our views and like it's very individualistic. Very much so comes from settler colonial relationship to the country, to the people, to the lands. And yeah, we have to create our own thing that is not just it's a very like because the right is essentially like these militias and stuff like that, and all these right wingers who are not in law enforcement, not in the military, but are just arming up in their homes, getting ready for shit to fan, is just like reserve forces or just fucking black shirts at any time for the American empire to use whenever on the local population here. So we need to build something that is focused on like community self-defense. I'm glad that that's a term that it's framed in, like you hear the Socialist Rifle Association or a lot of other people talking about these sorts of things. They frame it as community self-defense. And I think that's very important. And it does start on the most basic level. Yeah, whenever there's a group of people out in the streets who are having violence inflicted upon them, like what you see at these protests, that I think at the most basic level is where we start and look at things. And the most important thing is just making sure that people are making good strategic use of the forces that have shown up for this demonstration, and making sure that you have the capacity with people, throughout the crowd who are able to like handle this situation, and like keep the thing like very focused and coordinated. You're responding to the police. You're responding specifically to the new conditions as the police respond. You reevaluate, okay, how aggressive are they being? How aggressive are we going to be in response and stuff like that? And you can make sure that you have cohesion throughout the whole march. But if you don't have that,
I think it's really important, like understanding that the police are your enemy, that like there is no coordination in a meaningful way with the police, like because I know there are some people who think that there is some type of like line to be drawn where you can actually like find some middle ground with them. It's like, no, like the only thing that is true is that if they're out and about, make sure that other people are safe, because they really will try to pick you off.
Yeah. I mean that's very important. I mean we just have to get everybody on just towards that level of militancy where we're just past the point where it's okay, we're not working with them. Like we are doing something that is in contradiction to the state as it currently exists. In contradiction to
I know it sounds like something that seems obvious, but I have to say it because some people don't have that mindset.
Yeah. No, I know. I've seen it a lot. I've definitely seen it a lot. And I think it's something that's definitely, it's weird because, and I don't want to get too bogged down and talking specific to the protest, I guess, for the self-defense part. Or about talking about the protest. I don't want to get, especially because all this is so current. Like when we're speaking about it, I don't want to make too broad of an analysis, but there's been this trend of people trying to separate between the peaceful protests and the non-peaceful protesters. One thing is blaming the non-peaceful protesters, so to speak, blaming it on white anarchists is one strategy that's been like very common, especially amongst liberals and amongst liberal black people, as a way, especially for liberal white people, so you don't have to speak against black people's like response to being murdered by the police, but you can condemn when things are for you. And so you blame these outside actors we're talking about. That is increasing. People have seemed kind of desperate to do that, say, oh no, we're peaceful and stuff like that. But the police have been so violent. They've killed so many people. Killed 2 people. Like during these responses to the protests, their violent response to the protests, killed like I think 5 people literally since the protests began, like in relation to people out demonstrating and stuff. And people are becoming less and less trustworthy of the police. I think the liberal, oh, we're being peaceful and stuff, I think is going to die off a little bit as people are more and more serious, like, no, like, fuck the police. And I think that is increasing. Whether, how far that goes right now, I don't know. But next time this shit pops, next time this shit pops up, at least guaranteed, things are not going to be kinder about people's feelings towards the police, I don't think, than this time. Yeah, we've reached a certain point where it's really, I feel like there's such potential out of this. Like, I don't think, who knows where this situation is going to go. I really do think this has laid the foundation for, especially going into either Joe Biden presidency or second term of Trump's presidency, really laid a very solid foundation for a lot of the changes and like instability in this country, like fractures, and like applying pressure where there's pressure to be applied. But I back to self-defense because I think it's important that we talk about this. But I mean, what specifically did you just want to talk about self-defense, like broadly, or I'm curious, outside of guns?
So protests, yes, I think we covered that. But I think for vulnerable communities, it's really important to just talk about, like, look, I don't care if you like guns or not, gun safety is so fucking important. And even beyond gun safety, what it means to like have a community that you can reach out to, and so that you're not isolated in these times.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think everyone who is in a situation where they feel comfortable personally having a gun, I mean, so long as, I mean, it is a question of money. That is a thing. And that's why it is one thing which I definitely encourage people like pool together money with their friends, like for like something like a gun safe. You pool your money together, you get a big gun safe, and you keep it at one friend's place, and then you can all kind of collectively keep your stuff in there, whatever. That is like a good solution to insufficient funds. But yeah, so long as any individual who's comfortable with like operating a firearm does not have issues of mental health that they feel like they wouldn't feel comfortable having something like that around them, and has the money, but anyone outside of that, and if you have just any money on the side, I mean, if you can put aside a couple $100 for this very basic firearm, I would encourage anyone, definitely, to, especially martial arts community, like all Black people who can, should definitely, say groups, yeah, especially Black queer folk, armed Black trans people, 100%. Yeah, I think it's really important that everyone gets armed, because just on a very basic level, it's one of the most vital political tools. I think, like that's just a fact. It's just a fact that this is a very basic but very vital political tool, that any serious political movement has to incorporate this to some degree. And we're talking about the most basic thing. We're just talking about, just doing what any American can go legally do, living in this country, just going and buying a firearm, like legally registered and everything. That's such a very basic thing that we should be doing, and everyone can do, and just have it be totally like perfectly legal for them to do so. That is such a powerful political tool, like to have, I mean, fucking firepower, because there's just a certain point where if somebody doesn't like what you're doing, especially if you're a political movement that is doing something that is seriously challenging systems of power, someone's going to come kill you for it at some point. That's an inevitability, or else you're unsuccessful. Those are really the only two options. That either you're not actually succeeding at challenging systems of power, or you are, and somebody's going to come to kill you at some point. And you have to be ready to respond to that, even just at the most basic level. You have to be ready to respond to that. That's why I think everyone should own, more than like a couple firearms. I think everyone should definitely have a pistol. I think everyone should, at the very least, also have a shotgun.
Just like, it should be something that's manageable, and something that ultimately is for like self-defense or whatever specific thing you're going to do, and focused on, which is the important part, community. Like, it really shouldn't be the thing that you just get guns in isolation, especially if you're marginalized, because that can definitely put a target like on your back in certain cases.
Yeah, it's something where it's definitely people should be encouraging their friends to get them. It's something because it's an issue because like, I don't even know where to start because it's not just like, oh, go start a gun club. Because for a lot of people in a lot of like social spheres, like people who are like they're lefties and all their friends are lefties in those groups, none of them own a firearm. In a lot of cases, none of them even own a firearm. So it's like, well, fuck, you even have to get people armed in the first place to even get them to like politically organize themselves or organizing like at all. And yeah, it's hard. I just encourage everybody just like to, on a very base level, this is how we start a left-wing gun culture, like revive it or whatever, is that like you yourself getting one and then using that to help educate and like train people around you, and also encouraging them very much so to arm themselves. And if you're in a position where you can help them, certainly like helping your friend like financially or whatever, if they need help with it. But yeah, it's definitely, and then up to the point past that of organizations like the Socialist Rifle Association. I wish there was something else that would be more comfortable for non-white people, particularly for Black people. But I don't know of any other national orgs like that.
Defense League. I don't know if that's just in Texas though, and I don't know if they have any other organizations that they link with. But I do know that is an organization.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, you were telling me about that earlier. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know of any national orgs, especially not for any with like leftist politics, or even like I don't know of any. There might be one or two national. I mean, there's Black gun organizations and stuff, but some of them are more local or like regional based. But yeah, people starting organizations and stuff, and I mean, and then like, or if you already existing political organizations, bringing this into their politics and making it part of it. Like the fucking DSA, like I don't understand why they like the DSA was actually the DSA was a less liberal organization. It would very much so make sense for there to be some sort of partnership association, just because there's already so much overlap between a lot of the people, and there's a thing where a lot of people in DSA now culture is a thing where they'll recommend like, oh, you should join the SRA, and stuff like that. Like that would be like some sort of armed component or being affiliated with some group for already groups. Definitely, I think that would be important. But yeah, definitely make it something where it's mass participation and not just the American white male fantasy of just like one man defending his home from like some Black people like breaking in and him having to just unload, you know? Yeah, that is very boy shit, and ours needs to be focused on like protection the people that people care about, and uplifting people around you. So I don't know how much you want to go into like the gun shit, but definitely I recommend everyone to go look into arming yourself. Is really easy, even if you live in a state with like pretty heavy regulations, like I do. It's still relatively. I mean, if you're an American, living in the U.S., it's pretty easy to get a gun. State, you can at least get something very easily and completely legal, by the books. Encourage everyone to either. I mean, there's a couple ways of going about it. Either getting a pistol, I think would be good. A pistol is a very good option because that's something that you can have really just like wherever. You can take that wherever. You can't carry a rifle on the fucking street unless it's like kind of like apocalypse situation already or something like that. But shit could get crazy and you can have a pistol just like take and like whatever, and take wherever to protect yourself wherever you need to go. But considering that you're only gonna have your gun, really, considering if you live in a state where you can't get a concealed carry license, which if you do live in a state where you can't get a concealed carry license, definitely do that shit. But for people in places where you can't, or where it's extremely hard to, for just home defense, getting out of their pistol or a shotgun, those would be the first two guns I recommend people getting in either order. If you can carry, then yeah, like get the pistol first. But yeah, and those can both be gotten very cheap. Like I was in a big player and I saw a shotgun, which is like from a cheaper brand. It was 300. You can go get a brand new shotgun from the fucking Big Five. And this is not a state where getting guns is particularly easy. So if you live in like fucking Texas or some Midwestern place, or even the Pacific Northwest, something like that, or the South, you'll have some good options. But either pistol or shotgun, there's a lot of good options for stuff anywhere from as low as $200 to $400. Very easily, you get into a very decent pistol or shotgun. It'd be great to start out with, and then train with it a shit ton if you're shooting a lot. And take courses if you can. But I mean, you can find all the shit online if you know. Well, most of it. But if you can do courses, yeah, definitely do it. But just put in time training with it and everything. But yeah, I would recommend everybody to go and do that and look into what it takes in their state to get a gun. Because for some people, it's extremely easy. You just fucking walk into Walmart and 20 minutes later, you're strapped. So yeah, everyone should look into it for sure. It's something that we need more people to have.
Also consider just like the discipline of just like it's a responsibility. Like it's a lethal weapon. You really do have to like understand how it works and make sure that you know how to use it. Because if you're going to use it, you're going to have to actually use it.
Yeah, that is one thing I don't like. Like people think is big, tangentially related, but a big idea people have is, I want a pump action shotgun for self-defense. Because when you rack it, anybody's gonna run away when they hear that. And it's like, no. Like that shit should already been racked. Like that's the thing. Like you're not like that's not the point. Is never for intimidation or anything like that. If you're bringing out your gun, you are preparing to. If you're pulling out your gun for a situation that's not recreational, like that, you're actually responding to a threat. You need to be fully prepared to destroy, in whatever terms, whatever like you're pointed at when you pull that fucking trigger. And that's the mentality you would be. Like pulling out a gun is a like lethal option. You don't use a gun for intimidation, and that's a very dangerous mindset to have going into it. So yeah, that's what cops think. But yeah, so that's one thing I would urge people is like, no, you train not to scare anyone. Like you would hope, honestly, the thing is, you would hope if you're pulling out your gun to use it on someone, you would hope they don't even fucking see you holding your gun by the time you fucking like, you wouldn't even want them to, you'd want to get the drop on them in the first fucking place. But that is important. Yeah, training with it and training with intent of using it and thinking when you do pull this out like that, it's with intent of destroying something, possibly killing somebody. It's a very important, very big responsibility that it is legal, for most people to go and get one, but it is a huge ass responsibility that people need to keep a lot of things in mind to be able to go about it safely.
I think the last thing I want to talk about as far as self-defense is, because we did kind of talk about community briefly, but just that I feel like specifically now, I think it really is important to kind of like know the difference between friends and cadres. Like people who like, there are people you socialize with your day-to-day lives that are like people and that like you're close to, but there's a difference between those people and like your cadre, people who like understand like the political line, what's very serious, what's at stake, and who have your back in that political sense. Because that's really important to you. And it's not that you can't have acquaintances, but that there is, and friends and stuff like that, but just like there is a difference when it comes to like political organizing and community stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. I'm glad you said that. Before we get off self-defense, the thing I do for is martial arts, because I do think that's very important, especially for people who are not in a place like the United States, easy to get guns. Martial arts is a very important thing to look into, and this is honestly for me. I even probably a lot of times I feel like I'll spend more time on this than even the gun part, because I won't right now. But there's a lot of bullshit out there when it comes to martial arts, and it's something that it's a weird world. Like it's a very weird world in much the same way that like politics is. Like why there's all these sorts of weird ideologies and personality cults and just like different subsects and like sectarianism and shit like that. There's a lot of parallels. And as a result, there's a lot of weird stuff that people get wrapped up in. And So there's just a lot of misconceptions, in my opinion, about martial arts. But I think for everyone who's able, and I get that a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable going into a lot of martial arts gyms, and that's so I understand that, and I think that's something where we need to have more like leftist martial arts gyms. Like that's a thing that exists like in Europe and stuff like that. There in other parts of the world there are like leftist martial arts gyms. If you look up the podcast Southpaw Podcast by Sam Yang. Yeah, Sam Yang. He's really dope on Twitter too. He has a leftist martial arts podcast, and he'll talk about like the UFC and stuff, but then also talk about he'll like interview people who he's interviewed like three different people from the UK from different they're called like red gyms, and it's like literally like a communist like kickboxing gym or like a communist MMA gym, which is really cool. And I think it's something, and a lot of it is like focused on like making people feel comfortable with training. And there's like there was one gym actually in the US. I need to find it, but there was pictures that was, I think it was entirely non-men. I think the membership or something. I can't remember. It was a while ago, but like stuff like that, making people feel comfortable. Specifically people who wouldn't feel comfortable in your average MMA gym or whatever. But for people who do feel comfortable enough to go try out a go do kickboxing class or something like that, I totally recommend it. There's a lot of bullshit you should stay away from. I would recommend staying away from basically any traditional like East Asian martial art. A lot of them like in America have been very like, I don't even know what the word is, but really colonized and turned into like some strange bullshit. But then also a lot of them. But anyway, you should train in things that are like mainstream amongst like professional fighters, because professional fighters train stuff that like actually works. If you can do it, like, there's so much with how much money they're making. With how much money there is now, they're only going to train in stuff that's actually going to help them win a fight. Like what's actually most likely to help them win a fight. So anything you see basically that people train in the UFC, that's legit stuff. So throughout the Aikido, throughout the Krav Maga, all of that, no. But kickboxing, boxing, wrestling, especially if you're in high school, go join your wrestling team. That's very fucking good, like free martial arts training. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, which is Thai kickboxing. Couple examples of just like the more mainstream martial arts that you should train and that like are proven to work. And I think that's really important because like you're not going to get in like a fist fight with a police officer or anything like that, but you might need to like, kind of do like a push kick like on like somebody's riot shield. So like I saw a picture of somebody like kicking a cop's riot shield, and just like keep distance between you and them coming forward. Something that's more like defensive. I think honestly for your defensive capabilities more than anything, you should learn martial arts. Definitely. And striking and grappling too. Definitely. That's important. Like either judo or wrestling. But yeah, did want to go over the martial arts part real quick. And I would encourage everyone to do that.
That's super important. Because the other thing I was going to add to that would be like exercise. Like if that's not like a regular thing you do, but like also martial arts. Like just an actual form of self-defense like that. But yeah, I think we talked about self-defense enough. Unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up, I feel like.
No, I think that's it.
We can just move on to the bullshit.
Yeah, let's go to bullshit. Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like like in my case, and I feel like some other people too, like there's been a lot more people watching our stuff, kind of talking about watching Black content creators, and that's good, but also like not necessarily good because watching and consuming more non-white content doesn't necessarily translate to actual political gains, and that like I feel like there is something to be said about what can be done in these spaces meaningfully from people who are just lacking in melanin.
Yeah, so all right, so I want to ask you, so what spurred you to talk about this or to ask about this right now?
Because for me, it's like my gut instincts for a lot of things like tell me that like the attention is like good in a getting the message out kind of way, but also like I can't really control like what people think of said message, and especially when I know like a lot of that message will be received by people who like don't exactly have the perspective of like, hey, what does Black liberation mean? What does like being revolutionary in these senses mean? And that like listening to Black content can sometimes be a process of just listening to a different opinion, but not really internalizing what that opinion has to say about your context if you're not from that community. It's all just kind of like I don't want to be super crass about it, but it's very like going to the zoo. Oh man, I didn't know animals look like that. That's wild. Like you're just kind of getting like you're just getting that difference of opinion. It doesn't like hit home like that. It's like
I think that's a fine analogy to use, to be honest. That's a perfect metaphor because I mean, that's one of the reasons I stopped YouTube is because it felt like a fucking petting zoo. Well, I thought more like a minstrel show was the way I felt about it. But yeah, no, I mean, because really the question here really is like a much broader like thing about, I think the value of just any of this YouTube, like leftist YouTube shit, like as a whole, I think it's ultimately what that gets down to. I mean, like that's kind of why I stopped, because I thought it was too much for entertainment, way too much for entertainment, and not nearly as educational as it should be, or people aren't getting enough education about it, or only a handful of people are getting what you intended for to be the outcome of people getting out of it, and a lot of people are just, like, oh my god, like niggers like socialism too, wow. And it's just like, bro, like yeah, that's very much how it felt. It's like, wow, the Negroes have their own ideology for the left. And I couldn't stand that shit. There's just a lot of tokenization stuff. And let me say right here, nobody put me on no more goddamn lists of Black I don't care how bad you feel that the police murdered George Floyd. Don't put me in your goddamn YouTube video, okay? Don't put me in your goddamn YouTube video. And not even, no shade at some of the people who have already done so, necessarily. No shade, but just for the future reference. Nah, no thank you. No, yeah, let's not recommend my videos. Because first off, I haven't made a YouTube video in the longest fucking time anyway. And second off, I mean, it shows, because I feel like there's something very, I feel like I don't know what your situation, your fan base, or some of our homies, like there's, bro, we'll talk to them about that at length, but I just
really like, so there are like people who like clearly get like kind of my aesthetic, and like we'll talk back and forth, because it's like they're in the similar vein of like what is VHS to a generation of people who did grow up on VHS and just kind of like making different edits and trying to think of propaganda in that way. So it's like there's people like I can talk to in that space, but like for what happened as far as going from less than like 1K to all of a sudden having almost 4K in like a few days. It's been like over a week now, but like it's just, for me, seeing certain like responses to some of my videos, or just like being referenced in it, again, it just comes back to like the way my intuition on this is very, I didn't expect to get big this quickly as like a content creator who doesn't make stuff that's like for mainstream YouTube, because it's a lot of just like, here are probably things you haven't seen before that are really important for whatever context you're in as far as organizing in the US. So there's like a video about like the Operation Paperclip, and just how like, yeah, like Americans did like do a lot to let in Nazis simply because they're anti-communist, or like American in Transition, where it's just like, they're just little clips of things that are important. But I feel like a lot of people because they're long form at videos that are just information dumps. It's not entertainment. It's information. And so I feel like for me, it's one of those things where I don't think a lot of people who are just kind of showing up, and again, I don't know all these people, but just like a lot of people who are just kind of showing up, like, don't get that. For me, leftist content is mostly information. It's not as much entertainment. If it happens to be funny, that's cool, but it's mostly you're there to learn. Like when I listen to Black Red Guard say stuff, it's more like listening to like a teacher explain like these points you should take.
Yeah.
His content is just like affirming stuff I already know. It's challenging how I go about my life. And when I watch like other leftist content creators, like fucking Saber, the video he put out about Afrofuturism, that shit was so good. Like, because that's very much how you do Afrofuturism and how he made it very material about how he goes around stuff like that, or just like how it is different, how the videos are more important to how you go about your daily life and how much it is informational more than just entertainment. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel you. I still haven't watched Saber's video, which I feel super bad about. I need to, but I haven't watched the last like full like leftist YouTube video that I watched for this Spirit All. I literally think it might have been like, one of the last ones I watched was Racing Communism Part 3. Was your or maybe the Harriet video? Was the Harriet video after that?
Yeah.
Was Harriet? Okay, yeah, maybe. Okay, your Harriet video is probably the last like at all long video I've watched like that Spirit. So I feel bad. I need to watch Saber's video. I'm slacking, but I've just been burned out.
Like that's the other thing.
Yeah, I've been burned out.
Like, you shouldn't be in a space where you're just always consuming this content when there's a lot more you could be doing. But that even if you watch that content, you know it's not going to waste your time. It's not going to be about like the gossip. It's going to be about, hey, here's something really important that applies to the now, and how do we like execute this going forward? And that a lot of what content constitutes whatever the so-called left is online, in the popular sense. If we're going to talk about like, I don't fucking know what any of it is, but just like
Cracker Tube.
Yeah, like a lot of it is based on bringing it all back to like consumptive fetishes and just like the way in which you relate to capitalism. And it's not about, hey, like this is a real history of struggle. How do we like not just bring it back to the main conversation, but how do we continue that struggle, which is a lot of the other content that just like doesn't get talked about and isn't really treated like it's part of the same struggle towards revolution. The one video, the Black Internationalist video about, I don't know what it's called, I think it's War in the City or something. It's like a Maoist perspective of the American the video is called War in the Cities, a Maoist perspective on First World Lumpen. That shit, oh my god. Like that was just like, well, I need to rewatch that, but that's something that's so just like, I mean, it's really interesting to watch, you know, but like there's a lot of just like analysis, like actually like thought out and like being put into this, and a really new way of taking you think a lot of this theory that people read and shit like that and be like, oh yeah, whatever. And even people talk about, oh yeah, what happened in the past before, like the Black Panther Party, like did it with the lumpen proletariat, and then just applying it just like fucking today, just being like, where is the lumpen? What is their revolutionary potential? And just analyzing that group like as like a class, as a subclass, and analyzing their like revolutionary potential. That shit's like so amazing, but it has 3.5 thousand views. Barely anybody's fucking seen it, and I mean, I think it's definitely a lot more meaningful to be making stuff like that and have people connect with it like that than doing whatever, you know, like Peter Coffin's doing. But it still just sucks. It's like more people should I do want this to get to more of the right eyes, people who should be seeing this,
who this actually could really offer a lot. And yeah, so much of RedTube is just like, it's entertainment. It really is entertainment, and I'm so sick of it. And I guess the question started off with people watching like our videos, but yeah, even with our videos, well, I started because I asked you what your relationship is with your audience, because I feel like I had a very particular one that I need to ask other people if they had, but just definitely a lot of things just about the way I think white people, a lot of white people, really, in general, this isn't just like when it comes like this internet left shit. I've experienced this other places too, like college professors and shit, definitely. But a lot of white people just really get off on a certain type of black person that they think of as being like properly like respectable and properly like, you know, like articulate or whatever, blah blah blah. And I think the way I speak and present myself, in addition with the fact that like I was doing my shit better than these other fucking, you know, white leftist YouTubers anyway. I was fucking better at it anyway. But then just me having a specific thing, it was just very like I've never thought about this before. It was very much so like a I don't know, like an Obama type thing where it's just like, wow, that black man can speak. Oh my God, he must be the smartest man in the world. And it's just, it's so, and that's something I experienced from like in classes, literally like in the middle of like classes in college. That's something where I remember my first semester of my freshman year of college, a fucking old white lady, you know, anthropologist who fucking, yeah, means the best, but it's like really uncomfortable. Just some real, just, he's being too in on. And I had that situation with a lot of people where it's just like, they cared most, the biggest draw of my content to them, I 100% think was the fact that I was like this black person talking about these social shit. And I didn't think, and I like, there's one thing about like me, I go out of my way to watch black content creators and stuff like that, but these certain white people doing it and the way they went about it, with my channel, definitely, it felt like, I don't know, like they were just really not getting past the fact of just like fetishization, and just like spectacle of just seeing a black person speaking about this stuff in this specific type of way. And yeah, that's the thing where it's this past a certain point where I don't even think, you know, it's part of it, like it burned me out in a lot of ways where it's like, damn, like what's even the fucking point with a lot of stuff? And it just weirded me out very much so, definitely.
And just like, I feel that's super important because it's just like, that's literally how so many people experience these fucking spaces. Like, you come into these spaces wanting to do the thing, and then you just get burned out because, like, you feel tokenized immediately. Like, you don't feel like your ideas really are taken seriously in the same way that other content creators are. You just, like, no matter what ideas you put out there and how important it is, you're just kind of subjected to being the black opinion who can articulate whatever black issues appear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something where it's just so just like, yeah, literally, it's, I mean, the thing was like, it really was something where it's just, I just tokenizing was the best word for it. Where they just wanted me to be like, okay, this is the black person I listen to. You know, it's like, oh, they told us, like, these white people know when they're supposed to listen to black people on these sorts of issues. And just going to fucking me, because I feel like there was part of it where I felt, and it was out of my control, but I felt almost irresponsible for going forward with my platform with how much I felt tokenized and how much like I did not want to be a representation for like Black America or anything like it, because I'm like it's fucking ridiculous for some white person to be like, oh yeah, this guy. I guess it's not like they know me like that, but I've even explained, like, I've gone on my way on my channel, which I thought was me trying to be responsible. And it's been like, no, like, it's like I have a very particular perspective on like the black experience, and these are just my thoughts, and that's it. Like, I'm not speaking for other black people at all. And no matter how clear I like feel like I went out of my way to say that, it's still just inevitably that shit's gonna happen. Inevitably, it's going to happen. Where they just like, use you for this, like, oh, see, now I'm listening to black people. But it's just like, okay, you'll listen to me, but you won't listen to, suck my opinion past a certain point. Once he said certain things that like were made them uncomfortable, and the way he talks and the way he presents his ideas, like they will a lot of the times just if I go at things about it saying it a certain way, they'll shut the fuck up and just like listen to me because I'm doing it just like in like the proper way or whatever that they recognize. But for someone who like speaks like has different vernacular, and go and like has had like different life experiences, like me going to like that has a lot of things to do with just like like the education I received, like at the schools I went to. So like somebody's perspective is just like different, very different from mine, less palatable for like a fucking white person's like tastes. They are not going to fucking listen. They are not going to fucking listen at all. Even though I think someone like Suck My Opinion at times says things more if people would like to know about like the black experience in America, Suck My Opinion says things are more profound than anything that I'm going to like produce. Like a lot of stuff was like this is what you should fucking know about where black people are at in this country. This is definitely much more, and I'm not trying to tokenize him, but just like much more in line. I know for a fact much more in line with where people are at than fucking my perspective. Fucking certainly, like definitely.
A lot of black people that these white people get their perspectives, they're fucking bourgeois. Like,
yes, that's that I should have said it like that from the start.
We do come from like a middle class perspective, and that there are other black people who really do have a different perspective on a lot of politics, meaningfully, and that Suck can really articulate that. And I feel like a lot of people just tune that out because they want to hear him say something about the Democrats or whatever.
Yeah. And that's one thing why, if I do make YouTube videos, I don't want it to explicitly be about politics. I think that's one huge thing. What I want it to be focused on kind of something else a little bit. Because I just don't. It's just all very fake and shit anyway. But there's so many parts about the experience. It's just fake. This bread tube shit, it's all fucking fake, and it's all worthless. And people watching our YouTube videos is not doing shit to help black people in America. It's not watching my YouTube videos, like, even if it's shaming white people. It's still not like, it's like, bro, get in the street. People are getting tear gassed. People are fucking dying. People are getting murdered right now in response to because of uprisings about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many other black people before them being fucking murdered. More people are being murdered like during these responses. Like, if you're a white person or just non-black people want to support black people, go out in the fucking streets. Go stand side by side with people who've been getting tear gassed already. People who've had rubber bullets fucking shot at them. Because I know black and brown people who've been tear gassed, and white people too who've been tear gassed, who've had rubber bullets shot at them, who've had fucking all fucking sorts of shit happen. And certainly if there's black people who are going through that shit, you can fucking do it too. So get the fuck out here. And not everyone can for the ways to support, but like, don't go watch some black YouTubers videos. Go donate to bail funds. Go donate to like local fucking organizations doing boots on the ground work about these protests that involve these uprisings like right now. Go do some shit like that.
Matter. Like, don't give all your money to them.
Yeah, and if you do give to Black Lives Matter, just give to like a local like Black Lives, like the local Black Lives Matter in your city or whatever. Don't give to the national organization. Yeah, do that type of shit. That's important because like our YouTube videos are not doing anything meaningful. That's not you being an ally watching a fucking. That's not you being what we need. What we need is fucking accomplices in destroying white supremacy and whiteness itself as an institution. That's what we need is fucking accomplices. We need race traitors. We need people to betray fucking whiteness. And that's about going out and getting tear gassed and saying fuck you to these pigs and doing all of those things. Yeah, doing all those things that black people have been doing because black people are being fucking murdered and asking, okay, we're going to defend ourselves. So yeah, that's what everyone should be doing instead of, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, instead of watching our YouTube videos, go donate to the Black Trans Homeless Fund. or go donate to a bail fund for Black people in Minneapolis or your city. If there's protests and bail funds going on in your city, go do some shit like that. But BreadTube is counter-revolutionary.
You heard it here. That's what it is. But no, yeah, we're coming up on about an hour. I think that we talked about a lot. Talked about self-defense. We talked about the bullshit. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we covered most of the shit. Yeah, everybody go join an organization or something. Go do something. Go become prepared for even more political instability. Go become prepared to respond to even more repression from the state, from the police, and prepare to protect your friends too. That's all I gotta say.
Hey, you guys are watching. It shall be.